If a person that has not been found guilty by any court of law, then we cannot find ourselves to say, but this person, our member cannot be a spokesperson of a foundation.
No, but Mr. Ramaphosa hasn't been found guilty by any court of law.
That is why we are pursuing this issue in Parliament, so that there is real accountability. Like, if I can stress this right now, currently, there is no one that can outright say Mr. Ramaphosa is guilty or is innocent on that Phala Phala farm scandal. So what we are pushing for is the ATM. It is for the public to actually know what transpired in Phala Phala, so that a determination can be made in Parliament whether he's guilty of something or is innocent of something. So the impeachment process that we've been advocating for, it is a process that would reach that determination whether he's committed a crime or he's not committed a crime. And his organization has been trying to block that particular inquiry from happening. You'll recall that in September, the DA proposed an ad hoc committee to investigate. The ruling party said no. There was an impeachment vote last week. Again, the ruling party said no, let us not have an inquiry. Therefore, we cannot, as a country, move on without having that certainty that the president has not been found of wrongdoing. Other people in the country, they must also face the full might of the law. They must also be held accountable. But what we must not do, we must not make wrongdoing a matter of perception. Wrongdoing must be a matter of there is an inquiry that is held, there is a court case, and there is a determination where a person can be said he's done wrong or he's innocent.
But I mean, on the balance of probabilities, right? I mean, you have a lot of issues that you could pick up on the former president, whom Mzwana Lemanyi, protects, right now, and you cannot, sit there and say, I mean, Jacob Zuma is going through a process, and it's a court of law that will, determine whether or not he is guilty. But on the balance of probabilities, there's a prima facie case that, in fact, more than one instances or cases, the former president, didn't do himself, his political party, and this country proud. If you look at what emerged at the State Capture Commission inquiry, for example, there's a lot he has to answer for. So if you were the kind of political party, you portray yourselves to be a country that cares about this country, you should care about the fact that Mzwana Lemanyi, the head of policy in your political party, is a spokesperson and a defender of such a man.
Look, like I explained earlier, the processes are there. He went to the State Capture Commission, and from there, even if you look at the recommendations, there are recommendations that the NPA must investigate further, etc. What we're saying as the ATM is that those processes, the former president must answer. He must answer for whatever that commission is saying. He might have done something wrong.
I mean, what is the message you're sending to South Africans if you have, your person being the defender of that kind of a person? We're not saying he's guilty, but we're saying, given, what is in the public domain about the former president, isn't that the last person you would want to be next to?
Again, like I said earlier on, let us remove perception from what corruption and wrongdoing must not be a matter of perception, because what's in the public domain is perception.
No, but then why is that the case? Why are we adopting that attitude towards Jacob Zuma and not adopting the same attitude towards Cyril Ramaphosa.
With Mr. Ramaphosa, what we're saying is that what's in the public domain has not been tested in via Parliament through the processes. Let us have an inquiry that will determine the wrongdoing, and let us not leave it to perception. Similarly, with the former president, let all of these other institutions that are investigating him investigate. Let the court processes continue, and let there be a proper determination. It's the same principle. Let the law take its course with the former president, and let us Parliament do what is required of us as members of Parliament to actually reach also a determination with the current president. It's the same principle.
I mean, you realize, that's the reason many people believe you're a proxy party. I mean, you are set up to basically deal with ANC internal matters. You know, you are not the independent political party that you would like South Africans to believe. You are formed specifically to actually, by affection within the ANC that seeks to pursue their own agendas, and your existence has nothing to do with what you continue to tell South Africans you're about.
That is the biggest lie. If you check now what we're saying with the former president, we're not saying the former president must not be held accountable. We're saying there are processes that are in place. Lord, let those processes continue, and let there be a determination. Similarly, we're saying that the ruling party, when it comes to the current president, is blocking any form of an inquiry or investigation that will yield a result of determining whether the current president is guilty or not. So what we're saying, let the processes continue. And we do want to state we've got nothing to do with the ruling party. Our focus is on the executive. Our focus is on improving the lives of South Africans. And in Parliament, we are doing what we're elected to do, which is to hold the executive accountable. In the previous terms, there were parties that were very vocal in holding that those particular president accountable. No one had an issue with them. Similarly, there are parties even here now in the current Parliament that are also holding the current president accountable. No one is coming and saying they are proxies. We are not proxies. We are an organization that was formed by the people of our country with the sole intention of improving the lives of the people of our country. And I want to repeat, we've got no association whatsoever with any member of the ANC.
Who funds your party?
It is the members of the churches that support us. That is why you find that we do not, even when you check the IEC records, there's not, millions and millions that we get, because we don't even have funders that reach that threshold when it comes to funding, because it is, few rents that we get from the individual members from the different churches.
But what though is your, remind us, what is your party about?
The party is formed to transform our country. Firstly, to ensure that there's a new type of leadership that we are going to have in our country, leadership that is ethical, servant leadership that is focused on the interests of the people. There must be transformation when it comes to the economy so that South Africans can participate in the economy. We need to deal with these oligopolies that are dominating the economy, because those oligopolies are actually stifling the economic growth, and they are keeping out many participants, particularly the African majority in the economy. We also believe that in order to achieve everything in our country, you need to deal with parties that are funded. And when they are funded by these multitudes of organizations, they serve at the behest of those organizations, because whoever funds you controls you. Now, if you are going to have a party that is funded by ordinary citizens, now that party will be accountable to those citizens. That is why, as we sit here now, there's no one millionaire or backer that can call me and say, I don't like how you presented a debate in Parliament, change that, remove this motion, put this motion, because there is no individual that has got that hold over us as a party. We as a party, we are accountable to our members who sustain our existence.
Who are these oligopolies you're talking about?
If you were to check all of the industries in our country, if you check the banking industry, There's 5 to 7 banks that are dominating that particular space. You go to the financial services, it is also the same. You go to telecommunications, it is also the same. So, and all of these companies in all of these industries, they have a dominant market share of over 90% of the market share in their respective industries. So we believe that the manner in which that part of the economy is set up is not firstly inclusive, because we've got 7 or plus minus 7 companies that are controlling more than 90% of the total market share. For example, if you're to look at the telecommunications industry, it will be your Vodacom, your Cell C, your MTN, your Telcom. They're dominating more than 90% of the market share. Whereas if there were more players in the economy, firstly, there would be more jobs that are created and there will be more value that is added to the citizens. So that is why we believe that in order for South Africa economically to thrive, particularly for the citizens to be active, we need to dismantle oligopolies and have industries to be not to be dominated by a selected 7 or so companies.
I mean, but you also need to build local industries that can be big players in their own right, I mean, in the country, but also, I mean, in the world. You want market leaders. I mean, people who are going to go out there and show that South Africa has what it takes or can be a leader in very specific industries, especially those that are taking the world forward, of which telecommunications is one.
Yeah, that is not an issue. The issue is, in our view, the structure of the economy, whereby you have few players that are dominating. Now, that is why we also advocate in Parliament that let the government change its spending patterns, because currently government spends more than 80% of its budget on big businesses, and it is completely sidelining SMMEs who could benefit from the government spending, and they would get companies that would actually grow and participate in the economy. So that is why we believe that that needs to change, and when it changes, you are going to have more participants in the economy. And secondly, yes, you are going to have those world leaders, but those world leaders must not come at the expense of the exclusion of SMMEs or the majority in our economy.
Reflect a little on, I mean, this year, what, I mean, outside of the Cyril Ramaphosa issues that you sort of became famous for lack of a better description. What for you were the issues this particular year?
Firstly, this year has been, we can't celebrate anything that happened this year. If you're to look at all of the indicators, whether it's the unemployment rates, the poverty rates, the crime rates, the state of the economy, there's nothing for South Africans to celebrate. There's nothing that is memorable that, we can say South Africa had a successful year. So hence you find that we have been, and we are still continuing to push for measures to make sure that there are more people that are active in the economy to reduce the unemployment rates. We need to deal with crime. You need to deal with the SOEs that are dysfunctional. And you need to deal primarily with the state that is becoming dysfunctional, because if you look at the attitude of the current executive, this executive is taking power away from the state to the private sector. Hence you find that the president will appoint people in the business sector to actually deal with the red tape concerning the small businesses, instead of boosting state capacity in that regard. So,
but what's wrong there with that? I mean, if you have people who have skills, who are sitting with capacity that they may not even be utilizing, because some of them, I mean, are people who are retired or who have run very successful companies, I mean, in the country. What's wrong with utilizing or bringing on board their skills and expertise.
You need to boost state capacity.
Yes,
yeah, in everything that you do.
You're going to do that because, you have these people, you bring them on board, but you also bring, senior public service officials who are going to be, whether they are mentored or they sit in the same room with these successful former executives who will learn a thing or two and hopefully transfer. You get skills transfer in the process. That can't be wrong. Countries around the world do that.
Yeah, that is not an issue. The issue that we are facing, it is the destruction of state capacity by moving some of the functions from the state to the private sector, whereas it should be the state that is having the capacity being boosted by whoever that is a citizen that can contribute. That is our major issue, that the state capacity is being deliberately undermined at the benefit of the private sector that is entering the fray. So that is what we are saying, that at the core of the root causes of the problems, it is the attitude of the government that is not pro-building of state capacity, but rather taking some of the functions of the state to the private sector. You've seen how much SOEs have been being dysfunctional. Look at the issue of Transnet, the issue of PRASA, you look at the issue of SAA, you look at the issue of the unbundling of ESCOM. But if you look at what is happening, it's in its entirety, state capacity is being reduced at the favor of the private sector.
But how is that? Over the years, we've had this. I remember once upon a time there was something called Project Consolidate, where engineers, accountants, people with very specific skills that are still, in short supply in the private sector, by the way, were brought, in to really help. In the case of Project Consolidate, it was local government, and it was lauded. In fact, people who analyzed what happened during those years discovered that the state was actually very antagonistic in the way it approached those, in fact, it received those people, and it made it difficult for them to actually do, what they were there to do. As a result, we as taxpayers were robbed, of the opportunity to actually have people who could help that particular space. As a result, 28 years or so into democracy, that space is still very problematic. You've seen how Auditor General report after Auditor General report has exposed, the problems of that space, which many people said had started being attended to. In other words, the problems of that space had started being attended to by such a project as Consolidate. But because it was never given a chance, it became a failure.
In our view, Vuyo, you need to build state capacity in order to deal with the problems that are faced in the country. Yes, the state will have issues. There's no state that does not have issues. But you also, as a state, need to have mechanisms to deal with the problems that will encounter as a state in, advancing your objectives. There will be cases, for example, the issue of the Auditor General. There must be interventions that are done by Parliament, by the executive, to say, all of these years, we are getting all of these Auditor General reports that highlight all of these problems. What must be done to ensure that when the Auditor General picks up these issues, there is, there's action, tangible action that is taken against the wrongdoers. Not a case whereby the attitude of the government is to say we've got all of these problems and we are not going to boost or build the state to be able to deal with its own problems. Rather, we are going to go to the private sector and, delegate our responsibilities as a state to the private sector. In our view, the state is the only legitimate body or institution that can deal with these problems, because the state is a servant of the people. It exists to serve the interests of the people. The private sector, their interest, it is profit. It is something that will make economic value to them. Hence, with the myriad of problems that you face from your unemployment, inequality and poverty, etc., you need the state to be at the forefront of providing solutions to those problems, and you need the state to have mechanisms as well to deal with its own functioning, to be able to sift out any wrongdoing or any weaknesses its system is having towards achieving its objectives.
But you need those other players. I mean, you need business. You need conversations with business, but you also need commitments, actual, very real commitments from them. In other words, to invest in the economy. You need the cooperation of your labor movement, for example, in the interests of the country. So you cannot adopt an attitude that says they are there to make money or maximize profits, and therefore let's keep them at bay.
Look, the intention of the private sector will always to, profit. That is the bottom line. That is why you find that even with the minimum wage discussions, look at what happened in Marikana. Business there killed people because it was looking at their bottom line. So that is the nature of capital. That is the nature of private interest. That is why you need the state not to be antagonistic towards business or labor or any of these other stakeholders. However, you need the state to take the lead, and you need as a state to have an upper hand over the business, because the business must operate within your laws as a state, and you need as a state to have laws that will be effected or implemented by everyone.
Yeah, that's a fundamental issue, isn't it? Everyone should play according to the rules, but you cannot alienate them or keep them at bay because you are arguing that they're there to maximize profits. And where they are, their actions lead to, the death of people or exploitation even, that's what you have to deal with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you don't bring them closer, and make sure that they act in the interests of the country.
No, the only issue from our side is have the state work together with all stakeholders, not to be antagonistic or to be against with any stakeholder. However, as a state, do not take your responsibilities and delegate them to the private sector, because the private sector does not have the same interest as the state. The state must have the interest of improving the lives of the people, getting rid of inequality, poverty, etc. The private sector, on the other hand, will not have the same interest as the state.
What can you expect from the ATM in the new year?
In the new year, we'll champion our cause of accountability. We'll also be very, very vigorous in terms of putting our suggestions and proposals as to what should happen in order to deal with crime, to deal with unemployment, to deal with all of the problems that we face in our country.
Okay, Mr. Zungula, best of luck.
Thank you so much.
In the new year, and thank you very much for talking to us today. Of course, up next, I speak to a